if you're working on a tech product and you are close to getting your minimum viable product out, then you need this video because your MVP is going to be late. I have created apps and algorithms that have been used all over the world, and I have worked with clients that have created very successful tech companies. And I have never, ever, ever seen an MVP being released at the time when the developers originally said it would be released. And so my experience has shown that MVPs are always late, the release is always late, and it is always over budget. But do not panic. What you need is a strategy to deal with it. So first of all, why does this happen? It doesn't happen because the developers don't know what they're doing or they're lying to you. No, it is because, well, let's think about what developers actually do. So what developers do is they write code. Code is a set of instructions, basically. And that set of instructions is often done in if-then type of statement. So I'll give you an example. So if you're coding a dating app, you will say something like, if the user puts in that they are female and straight, then show that user profiles of straight males. So you see, if then. So when there are just very few instructions, it all makes sense. But when you have lots of instructions layered upon one upon after another, sometimes those instructions end up contradicting each other. Basically, weird stuff happens. So you've probably noticed this, sometimes when an app that you're using on your phone, when it gets a software update, something doesn't work as well as before, and essentially the company has to fix it. So if this is a bug, this happens, it is okay. But when this happens at MVP level and means that your product cannot be released because there is some sort of unforeseen problem that needs to be sorted out, it is painfully visible because either your product is out or it's not. So thing one that I want you to remember is that these unforeseen things happen and developers generally only know about them when they are happening. So usually, like, they're unforeseen because you cannot foresee them. So what can you do? Well, think about it like having a friend who's always late. I'm sure you have a friend who is always late. We all have that friend. How do you deal with that friend? You know that they're going to be late. You know that each time they have a respectable reason or excuse, and you plan for it. Like if you're going to invite them for dinner, maybe you invite them earlier than everybody else. You buffer. And this is what I want you to do when you're getting ready for your MVP release. If you have investors or if you have stakeholders, if you have other people involved, which you obviously always do not give them the original developer's estimation for when the product is going to be out. Be quite fuzzy about it. So, for example, you could say that your product is going to be released in the spring quarter, or your product is going to be released in Q2. So you can give the quarter, do not give the month. You're very likely to be late by 4 to 6 weeks. That is pretty normal. If you're late by a whole quarter, okay, then you have a problem. But 4 to 6 weeks is totally fine. So always leave yourself enough buffer time, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to say a product is coming out next month and then actually your product is 6 weeks late, because you will look bad. So always build in that buffer time. Another thing that is super important for you to do is be in polite and collaborative conversation with your developers and find out where the snags are. Because often another thing that I see happen is that people have this idea for their MVP where essentially they have lots and lots of features. Okay, I mean, by the way, you shouldn't have too many features in your MVP, but whatever. Usually there are more features that people want to release than actually end up being released. So what ends up happening is that as developers are writing the code and they're coming up against snags and you're basically late and you're thinking, oh my God, we have to get it done now, you need to find out from the developers, where are the issues? Which features have those issues? And then you need to decide, can we release our MVP without those features? It doesn't mean that you never release those features. You could release those features literally in 2 or 3 weeks' time. But if there is something that you could get rid of in the MVP and release it 3 weeks later, then I would say get rid of that feature, get your MVP out, get people using it, and carry on working on the software update, and then release that feature. So to sum up, product launches in the tech world are always late. I say that they're like subway station refurbishments. Always late, always over budget. That's true if you're making an app, a site, or an algorithm. Okay. Number two, what you want to do as a result is buffer. Buffer that time. Do not give a month of release, give a quarter. And thirdly, be in communication with your developers. So if you need to, and most people need to, figure out which features you can do without in your first product release in your MVP and get rid of those features. Launch your MVP and then launch those features 2 or 3 weeks later. Honestly, if you do that, it's going to be fine. Nobody's going to die. I've seen this over and over again. And finally, that period before getting your MVP out is really, really stressful. So be nice to yourself.